It's a penis, the doctor declared to my mother on May 4th, 1966. Well, actually, he probably said, it's a boy. But that penis was what allowed him to confidently write the word male on the birth certificate. At that moment, no one questioned my masculinity. I was simply a baby boy. Like the other babies in the nursery, I spent the majority of my time eating, sleeping, messing my diaper, and crying. Other than the aforementioned penis, there was no other distinguishing characteristics to set me apart from any other babies in the room. Because I was a baby boy, society assigned me the masculine color blue. While the girls were wrapped in pink blankets, I was wrapped in my new signature color. This would be the first of many symbols of masculinity bestowed upon me. For the rest of my formative years, I was taught the masculine way to hold my books, look at my nails, comb my hair, pronounce my words, and cross my legs. As if this list weren't long enough, I was told that masculinity meant I needed to be good at sports, math, killing things, burping, and farting. There was also a list of things I should not consider. Dancing, flower arranging, decorating anything, and self-expression. Pastel colors, fashion, and any cooking outside of grilling or the making of chili was strictly forbidden to us. Fortunately, Hollywood had provided me with two acceptable types of masculinity for my emulation. One was the suave and debonair gentleman, who was usually seen in a nice suit, holding a martini with a beautiful woman by his side. The other was rugged and masculine, like John Wayne and Clint Eastwood. Try as I might, I could not be that masculine, so I strove to be the handsome gentleman. No one doubted his masculinity, and I hope no one doubted mine. In my 30s, I gave up on fulfilling society's ideal for me and came out of the closet. I embraced what being a gay man meant to me. I look forward to being free of the masculine limitations society had placed on me. Oddly enough, after living in fear of being discovered as a gay man for more than 30 years, when I finally came out of the closet, most people were quite surprised and said they would never have guessed I had obviously done a good job of being masculine. But now, I would never again have to worry about this. I was free to be me. I logged into the gay.com chat room and began conversing with local gay men in an attempt to find a date. Are you masculine? The stranger in the chat room asked me. Because I don't like feminists. I'm only interested in straight acting guys. Once again, the blue blanket was wrapped around me.
Our doctor looked at the sonogram and said that our baby seemed to have stopped growing. He wasn't sure what was going on, but since we were only about a week away from the due date, he told us to report to the hospital very early on the coming Thursday morning. We did as we were told. My wife was given the induction elixir, and we waited. The baby seemed unimpressed. So, we were directed to take a brisk walk through the halls of the building. So, grabbing a pager, off we went. We were giddy for each other, giddy for the arrival of our child, and enjoying ourselves immensely. Sometime later, the pager went off, and we headed back. When we arrived, we were sternly admonished. This is serious business, and things may not turn out well, was the gist of it. Nice. Eventually, the contractions started, but our baby's heartbeat slowed a bit immediately following each contraction. it would need to be a C-section. My wife was wheeled off. A bit later, I scrubbed down and dressed and was escorted to the operating room. There were 4 others or so, not the doctor yet, in the room ahead of me chatting casually. I noted a sheet suspended vertically at about my wife's shoulders and decided my post should be on the side by her head. I had no particular curiosity about the appearance of my beloved's inner workings. I thought holding her hand and keeping a conversation going would be my best strategy. At my suggestion, we had asked not to be informed of our child's sex. I wanted to meet our new family member at birth, without any preconceptions. So, we picked names for the eventuality of either. But at this point, of course, we were eager to know. The doctor came in and went to work. A nurse assisted, but the others only paid vague attention. It was very quiet. Then, the doctor announced, "You have a very little girl." He wasn't exaggerating. Her birth weight was 4 pounds, 10 ounces. But she was fully developed. Perfect. The red, wriggly little person was carried away and placed into a plexiglass bassinet. She seemed mildly cross, except when someone would come and prod her. Then she protested vigorously. I crossed the room and sat next to her. She seemed unaware until I said, "Hi, Sarah." To my great surprise, she turned and looked at me. It just hadn't occurred to me that she would recognize my voice. As I continued to talk to her, I reached into her bassinet. Still watching me, she took my pinky in her tiny fist, gripping it tightly and becoming calm. I was in love. I still am.
Happy for Dad and son attending 6:30 a.m. daily mass. See, I volunteered for this unsought-after duty just so that I could accompany my dad to his pre-dawn medical doctor's rounds at the university hospital. I'd always hold my breath as Dad zoomed the Austin Healy. Then we take a right at the Semaphore barrier, and we go to the doctor's parking lot. And we pass underneath it by just like an inch or two. And we'd laugh our heads off, and then we'd head over to Mass at St. Thomas. And the nuns, my daily oppressors in elementary school, were usually the only other celebrants. My dad would join the nuns up at the communion rail. And as an altar boy, I'd hold the paten under his chin, just, lest the sacred host drop. And then I'd whisper to him, along with the priest, say, "Domine, non sum degnus, sed tantum di verba, et salibatur anima mea." Oh Lord, I am not worthy. But say the word, and my soul shall be healed. And so even as a 6th grader, I knew all the prescribed Latin for the Mass. And added to the thrill of participating in the sacred ritual was the satisfaction of doing something well that my dad just didn't know how to do. I couldn't buy him back from God. Happy was our overnight dash to Sebring for the 12-hour races. And I'd freeze in the Healy all night, and then I'd wake up on Saturday morning and I thought I was in heaven. We were in a country orange groves to the horizon, and it was March, so they were in bloom. And the scent, never mind the sight of the blossoms, was a reverential experience. And then later we go and we watch Phil Hill and Sterling Moss, the Rodriguez brothers, Pedro and Ricardo battle it out. They're in sunny Florida. There were Ferraris, 5 of them. And there were Aston Martins and Porsches, Jaguars, the whole gamut of exotic cars. But I couldn't buy him back from the night. We're happy we're Saturday excursions, just the 2 of us again. We go out to go-kart tracks on the Georgia Sticks, with the go-kart balanced on the back seat of the Healy, tied to the bumper, a lifeboat suspended from a landlocked yacht. Or maybe the Healy itself was a lifeboat for the father and son search for reclamation. I couldn't buy him back from the earth. Awful are my parents' martini arguments, slamming them back day after hard day. The fuel was 6 parts gin, 1 part dry vermouth. Twisted lemon over, not in. Or sometimes it was Gordon's with martini stones. Shaken, not stirred. Seeing themselves in a club with Churchill and Hemingway and Clark Gable. And these nights always ended in screaming, hate-filled resentments, and at the time I could only imagine the cause. I remember those fights even when I was 3, except at that time, my only defense was to shrink to the size of a mouse. But I couldn't buy him back from the trap. He died a month after the birth of my son, his first grandchild. He was never redeemed, never reclaimed. The South's foremost liver disease specialist of cirrhosis. And so, the moving finger writes, and having writ, moves on. Nor all thy piety, nor all thy wit shall lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all thy tears wash out a single word of it.
At the age of 12, I was given a permission slip to be enrolled in a sexual education class at school. When I arrived home, I nervously handed the paper to my mother, the gatekeeper of my household. After giving the permission slip a quick skim, Mother looked over the top of the paper and asked with a smile, "Are you okay with this? This is pretty heavy stuff." I mustered all the courage I had developed in my 12 years and gave her a stoic nod. The next day, I returned to school, prepared to enter the proving grounds of manhood. My sex ed class was full of squeaky-voiced boys, nervously waiting for their compasses and legends to the map of masculinity. The school's burly football coach entered the classroom and prepared to walk us into this uncharted territory. Throughout the course, we were enlaced with the knowledge of the body's inner workings. This led to several exams over the anatomy of the male and female reproductive systems. We all did fairly well on the male anatomy exam, as we were all familiar with the workings of our own personal plumbing. However, things changed when we began to study the alien hardware of the women. I returned home that night after a grueling lesson of the female body with one thought in mind. If you don't do well on this test, your glaring lack of manhood will be exposed. With this scary thought acknowledged, I set out to meticulously study and memorize all the alien female hardware and each of its functions. A few days passed, and the coach entered the class with graded exams over the female anatomy in hand. As he called each student individually to the front of the class, he handed back the graded papers while scolding or mocking each boy for doing so poorly. I watched as my peers approached the coach, as a convict would approach a firing squad. I began to prepare myself for the impending public humiliation. The coach waited to hand my test back until all the others were distributed. He paused and said to the class, "I expected that you boys would have done better on this. You all did poorly." He then paused again and then pointed directly at me. I froze. "Well," he added, "except for him. He did so well that I'm convinced that he is going to be a gynecologist." Silence fell over the room. As the eyes of the other students turned to me, my feet found the floor and I stood up. After taking a deep breath, I walked to the front of the class to receive what felt like a medal of honor from the smiling coach. I can only assume that no peacock has ever strutted the way I did as I walked back to my seat. To me, that exam represented far more than a grade, but truly felt like evidence and proof of my manhood. And that overwhelming feeling of validation seemed to relieve all of my adolescent anxiety.
When I was 8 years old, I began to develop tics, an incessant blinking of the eyes, a furrowing of the forehead and brow, severe shaking of the head, and twisting of the neck, which were a cause of extreme embarrassment. When I was 10 years old, my parents, fearing I had a neurological problem, took me to the doctor for a complete physical. They were relieved when the kindly, much-loved family physician pronounced, "There is nothing wrong with him. He's just a nervous boy, and he'll outgrow it." But I didn't. With each passing year, the tics grew worse, and no one seemed to understand that they occurred involuntarily. Sometimes, a complete stranger at the movie theater or some other public venue would ask, "What's wrong with you?" Or, worse, "What's your problem?" Every school year, I would encounter a new teacher and a new group of classmates who would deride me for my behavior, and this was particularly damaging. It led to an annual depression that began in August, a few weeks before school was scheduled to begin, and continued into mid-October until I grew used to yet another traumatizing classroom environment. Whenever someone was cruel to me because of my problem, I hated that person with a blind rage. I wished him or her dead, immediately. When taunted, I would sometimes look at a tormentor with such anger that my vision would blur. And then it would occur to me that perhaps through the act of blurring my vision, I was eliminating him or her, which I felt no one deserved, no matter what that person's ignorance. So a victim of my own obsessive, compulsive induced guilt, I had to develop rituals that involved more tics. They had to do with numbers and behaviors that would undo my previous actions, that would eliminate the curses I had placed on others. When I was 22 years old, I experienced a miracle. The psychologist hypnotized me, and in less than an hour, the tics went away. I can still remember my feeling of wonder when, as I left his office, My forehead and brow felt like twitching, but would no longer do so. This, however, was only the beginning of my journey to recovery. One year, when I was in my early 30s, the annual August to October depression I had continued to experience didn't lift when it should have. I also became prone to frequent split-second rages, which were usually caused by the most ridiculous things. As autumn turned to winter and winter warmed to spring, the rages began to occur more frequently, and depression began to evolve into an inability to function. Feeling alone and increasingly desperate, I embarked on 11 months of one-on-one Friday and Monday night group therapy sessions with a soulful therapist who helped me change my life for the better. It has been 35 years since the hypnotism and 25 years since the nervous breakdown. The tics have disappeared into the distant recesses of my past, and I very rarely experience depression. I no longer mourn for the things that I may have lost or for who I might have otherwise have been. My life is still ahead of me, and it is full of promise.
I am a man, I am straight, and I have a strong sex drive. And I was a virgin until I was 26 years old. There are a lot of men out there that have been in my situation. I knew a number of them. Growing up, but 3 things set me apart from everyone else. First off, I'm not religious. I do not believe in abstinence. Second, I don't think sex is a bad or scary thing. Third, I've had plenty of opportunity. I had my first opportunity when I was 15 years. I lived in the basement of my parents' house, and they had those large windows that led out to a dugout fire escape next to the house. Perfect for sneaking out or sneaking girls in. I did both on several occasions. I had a girl over one night. We were making out, getting a little touchy. We spent a lot of time doing that because, that's what teenagers do. That night, it went a little further. I had my fan on. She said she was hot. Wanted to feel the air. So she took her shirt off. Well, things went pretty fast from there. Before I knew it, she was asking me to stick it in. I responded with, "I'm not ready." Well, all of a sudden, all of the things you would expect a teenage boy to say, that was not it. Needless to say, the night ended there, and the girl didn't want to see me after that. Why did I say that? The strange thing was, I didn't know why. I just knew I didn't want to lose my virginity that night. As a kid, one of my favorite shows was Mad About You, starring Paul Reiser. And it was all about this nondescript couple living in New York. For some reason, I was infatuated with how they interacted. And all I knew was I wanted that someday. At one point in time, I actually convinced myself I might be gay. It was just so odd for somebody my age acting like this. A teenage boy who turns down sex, fantasizes about marriage. Seriously? What's wrong with it? So, I looked at pictures of naked men to see if I would be aroused. No. Then, I looked at pictures of naked women. Yep. Definitely attracted to women. I had a friend who was gay. I talked to him about it. He laughed at me, assured me I was straight. So there I am, a straight teenage boy crazy about girls, for some reason, doesn't want to have sex with. I ask you again, what's wrong with you? Since then, it's been the same story over and over again. Meet a nice lady, things are going very well. I end up turning down sex, things fall apart. I did get pretty used to oral sex, but you can only do that for so long before things move to the next level. Many times, I psyched myself up. Okay, you just gotta do it. You just gotta get in there. Get it over with. Then you won't get hurt. Then you can warm. That never worked. A bunch of my friends did that, just had sex to get their first time over with. It felt so wrong, so disgusting. The longest relationship I had, besides the one I'm in now, was with a girl I met my senior year of high school. She was super religious. Even though I didn't agree with her religion, this was perfect for me. When things got a bit too hot, I would stop and tell her, I'm just looking out for you. I know you don't want to have sex till marriage. I respect that. We set up boundaries and rules so things wouldn't go too far. It was comfortable and easy, and I was miserable. Looking back, it was a pretty big sign. I should have broken up with her. I mean, isn't not wanting to sleep with your girlfriend a bad thing? Funny thing is, she was having sex, just not with me. Then, at 26, I met the girl I would marry. I don't know why or what happened, but something felt right. 2 weeks later, after meeting her, I lost my virginity. I had no idea I would stay with her, but I did, and I'm really happy I did. I'm really happy I didn't have sex with anybody else. And again, I have to say, I am against abstinence. Sex is fun. Hell, sex is awesome. But doing something you don't want to do for whatever reason, never good. Society pressures you to follow all the norms. Don't. At least, not if you don't want to. I fought against losing my virginity for a long time, and even though I eventually lost it, I never lost my self-respect. And that, it was worth it.
Religion. Oh, religion. I don't even know where to start. Religion is what was used as a crutch by most of the people I know to avoid taking responsibility for their own thoughts and actions. Early on, I learned a trick. Do something stupid, then go pray my way out of it. Be an asshole. Then study the Bible to prove I'm not an asshole. Religion became my crutch, but it also became my chains. I couldn't think for myself. I couldn't believe that there were good people outside of my religion. And it wasn't even the fault of the religion, so much as the people in the religion. Through a religion supposedly based on love, acceptance, long-suffering, and undying kindness, I learned to be an asshole. I learned to be a racist. I learned to be a misogynist. I learned to be an elitist. I learned the art of humble bragging. For all of that, I'm sorry. I wish I'd learned differently. Now all of the things I don't want to be, well, they're there. I change little by little into the person I'd rather be and find out more that it isn't the religion itself, that it is bitter and abusive, that a lot of the people in the religion, a lot of people who I was told from a very early age to trust and revere.
Things were much different when I was a child. Parents didn't have to worry so much about what their kids were doing or where they were. At an early age, you were responsible for yourself and for others. I was born in October 1934, one of 4 children, 2 girls, 2 boys. We lived on Hill Street in South Bend. In 1942, my family moved to East Edison Road. Our house was about where the electric substation now stands. At the time, this is mostly a farming area. Edison Road was in the country. East of Ironwood Road, which was a 4-way stop, there were only 4 houses on the south side of the road. The north side had 7 houses west of Hickory Road. Otto Baker lived on the north side of Edison. He was the county assessor, and he had a large farm that a lot of kids, including myself, would work on. We picked onions, radishes, and strawberries. Today, a partial area of this property is known as Bain Park, and his house still sits on Crestwood and Edison. Mr. Baker allowed the local children to take out any of his horses for a ride. All we had to do was return them to the barn. With the money I earned from Mr. Baker, among many things, I was able to go to the movies, buy a radio, and a baseball glove. One of my regular adventures was going downtown to visit my old friends and go to the movies. I would usually hitchhike on Edison Road, and my neighbor would give me a lift into town. He worked at Bendix on the night shift, and he passed our house at the same time every day. I liked going to the State Theater, one of 4 major movie houses downtown. The other 3 were the Granada, the Palace, now the Morris, and the Colfax. The State had the best movies for younger audiences. The Bowery Boys with Hunt's Hall, or Sherlock Holmes with Basil Rathbone were shown almost every week. After the movie, I walked to LaSalle Street to get a hot dog and Royal Crown Cola at the original Coney Island. Next, I would walk up to Michigan Street in LaSalle. The South Shore was on the northwest corner, and the Bullmore was on the northeast corner. At the end of my adventure, I walked to the corner of LaSalle and Hill Street, where I'd meet my mother and father. My mother worked at Studebaker, and my father worked at Wilson Brothers Shirt Factory. They weren't surprised because they knew I was going to come into town to watch a movie. I was 10 or 11 years old. It was a simpler time back then.
My son Fergus was about 10 years old when he discovered the Phoenicians. It was not the first passion in his young life. Before that, there had been digital clocks, running in circles, and of course, Legos. Fergus was diagnosed with autism when he was 3. So by the time he was 10, we were used to his passions, which could come as suddenly and intensely as a summer storm and end just as abruptly. One day we bought him a computer game called Age of Empires. The game involved ancient civilization, Athenian, Roman, Yamato, and others, through a series of computer gaming moves. Fergus played all of them obsessively, but ultimately got hooked on the Phoenicians. And I mean, really hooked. He played Age of Empires for hours nonstop, but only the Phoenician part. And when he wasn't playing, he was talking about the Phoenicians, who they were, where they came from, what they built, who they fought, and so on. He brought home picture books from the school library, maps of the ancient world, and whatever he could find out about the Phoenicians. One morning during all this, I took him to the dentist to have his teeth cleaned. This was always tense. Fergus wasn't comfortable with strangers under any circumstances, but he positively hated having strangers put anything in his mouth. Our practice was that I would accompany him to the hygienist's office and sit beside him, holding his hand while the hygienist did her thing. On this particular morning, however, Fergus was barely paying attention to what was going on around him. He was talking about the Phoenicians. At every possible moment, that is, whenever the hygienist removed her instruments from his mouth, Fergus was asking questions like, how did the Persians conquer the Phoenicians? What were their major trade routes? What did their money look like? And on it went. I'll admit that I wasn't really paying attention. My mind was elsewhere, thinking about the things one thinks about. The next deadline, an upcoming meeting, all the passing trivia that fills the day. But Fergus was still firing questions.
Dad, can you read Phoenician?
No, Fergus.
I want to. I want to learn it.
That's nice, yes.
I want to know what they said.
Yeah.
Why did they disappear?
I don't know.
Do you think they will come back?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure.
Dad, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you think I was born to revive Phoenician culture?
Those were his exact words. I laughed, jolted out of my reveries.
Do you think I was?
I don't know, Fergus. I guess that's as good a reason for anyone to be born, I guess. were all quiet. Fergus, the hygienist, and me. The hygienist went on with her work. Many years later, I still think about this. I've never come up with an enduring lesson or moral, and Fergus has long forgotten about his passion for the Phoenicians. But I guess we're still working at it. Fergus, me, others. Trying to figure out who we are, where we are. Maybe we never find it. Or maybe we discover it over time, year by year, day by day. Maybe it's something new and strange, like Phoenician culture. Or maybe it's familiar, something that we've known all along, just as I know now, and have known since the moment of my birth, that I was born to be the father of Fergus.
He may come across as hard to get, but he's been through a few things. He's been there, done that. Because he once cared about someone who failed to care about him. He's built a fortress to protect his heart from further damage. You told him that you're different, but he won't believe it until you prove it. Words don't mean a thing. Actions, however, mean everything.